All right, welcome everyone to the Space Education Symposium. It is November 12th, 2022, and excited to have everybody here this morning. Like I said during the welcome questions, a lot of familiar faces. Thanks, folks, for coming, and a lot of people I've yet to learn with. So great way to start this Saturday. I'm going to say just a few words before we dive in. I want to, of course, give a nod to this afternoon's capstone speaker, Frank White. This event was very much inspired by the idea of the overview effect, which he first coined in 1987. He published a book, The Overview Effect, about the change in consciousness that occurs when someone sees the Earth from space. Seeing us as in this together as crew of planet Earth, and seeing that there are no borders, and seeing really just how fragile this place is that sustains all of us, and that need to take care of it. Now, people experience this in different ways, and we have 5 people with us this morning who have experienced it to some degree or other from space, so we'll be excited to hear their perspective as well. Frank co-founded the Human Space Program, which is hosting this event. The Human Space Program is a nonprofit effort looking pretty far out at sustainable, ethical, and inclusive stewardship of the solar ecosystem. So this is not just the exploration of the solar system, but care for it, and sort of shepherding life from this planet perhaps to the others, presuming we find them to be lifeless when we get there. But of course, we don't want to export our conflicts. We want to export the best of humanity and our ability to get along and meet a variety of challenges together. So that's what the Human Space Program is all about. It's meant to be a 1,000-year long-term effort that brings humanity together, like perhaps massive construction projects, like a cathedral, for instance, might have brought generations past together in past centuries. So if you're interested, head on over to humanspaceprogram.org. You can learn a lot more about it, and you can hit the Get Involved button if you would like to get involved. We do have a couple of other partners. Earthscape VR is Dr. Anahita Nizami's company, and I'm sure she can tell you a little bit more about it, but they are focused on giving leaders workshops and tools to better understand the overview effect and its impact on their lives and their leadership. And they use virtual reality to do this. They were previously known as VROE, or virtual reality overview effect.
That's right. Yes, well done.
Just to interject, that experience. Go for it.
So Earthscape VR is the new name for some of you that know and some of you that don't know. It won't take too much time. But we actually we have 3 foundations to what we do. One is leadership and peak performance, sustainable leadership and peak performance. And the other two areas are mental health and well-being. And we provide multi-sensory extended reality technologies that try to tap into brain states and elicit specific emotional responses in people, and largely based on the overview effect and Frank White, inspired by his work.
And he is a practicing psychologist, so I knew she'd be able to tell you better too, which is fantastic. Aries Learning is my company. I'm one of the co-founders, and it is a vision for a new kind of school that is focused on all of this and preparing students today for humanity's rapidly approaching multi-planet future. So it's an engaging school focused on space industry, workforce development, and on student entrepreneurship. So I'll be presenting on that later today. I also want to introduce Ron Rossano, who is our other co-host for the event. Ron is a future astronaut with Virgin Galactic and a handful of other opportunities. He's planning to go up, I know, on Space Perspective and Worldview. And he's been passionate about inspiring students for, over 25 years, and has visited hundreds of classrooms and works with thousands of kids through Virgin or Galactic Unite's Space Chat. So Ron, I don't know if you want to say anything.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I've just been long focused on communicating and with students about space leading activities in classrooms and virtually. And Great to have you all here. I could put a link in for Galactic Unite if you want to learn more about that. It's a group of future astronauts reaching out and inspiring students in STEM careers. So great to see you all. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Ron. I also need to, of course, mention that Anahita and I have new books out this year. We both worked with Frank on these projects. So Frank wrote the foreword to Space Education, Preparing Students for Humanity's Multiplanet Future, and edited a lion's share of the book. So I was really excited to work with him on that. And Anahita and Frank co-wrote a book, a children's book, that exposes kids to the overview effect through a really fantastic adventure. So if anybody wants to drop the Amazon links in, those are in the speaker notes as well. So for the rest of you who are joining us, I'll introduce, of course, the panel in just a moment. But for the rest of you, we hope you will participate in the text chat. Definitely do feel free to drop in links and thoughts as we go through the panel. Feel free to use the raise hand feature if you have something you would like to interject or ask. It's meant to be really interactive. But given the size of the group, we don't want you to just interrupt at this point. But we will more than likely invite you to unmute and share screen as well if that's relevant. So feel free to raise hand, feel free to use the chat. And if you do need any help, use the help feature, and that will essentially send a direct message to Ron, or you can direct message Ron or one of us that's hosting. Throughout the day, the speakers will also have co-hosting status, so they should be able to help you out. I also want to invite you all, you got the emails about this, to have brought a problem that you want to solve and to consider this meeting your diverse think tank for addressing that problem. So please do engage the presenters, engage the other participants, ask your questions, make those connections, create opportunities for synergy while we've got all of these minds together this Saturday. Now, when we are done with this opening panel, you'll be able to find the schedule here. This is the short link. Perhaps Ron or Anahita, we can drop the link in the chat as well. But if you go to the main site there, spaceeducation.events/schedule, you will find all of the sessions for the day, descriptions for each of them, and bios for the presenters, times, and which room they're going to be in. It will look something like this for each session. And we will, when the time comes, have 5 breakout rooms. They'll be called room 1, room 2, room 3, room 4, and room 5. And you can simply choose if you want to go see Cheryl Gallagher's Evolving Space Culture in the next session. You can just click on the breakout room button at the bottom of Zoom. Probably not there now until we open the rooms. But when it is there, you can click the breakout room button and click on room 2, and you'll be in there with Cheryl and the other participants in that session. So that will kick off at 9:15 after this panel. But first, it is my pleasure to introduce our panelists. Really excited to have all 5 of them here. Fantastic way to kick off this event and get their perspective on it. For what it's worth, this slide is in chronological order compared to based on the time that they went to space. Dr. Soyeon Yi went to space in 2006, and she is South Korea's first and so far only astronaut. She actually won a nationwide competition of 36,000 contestants vying for the spot on that flight. And she was fantastic for it and conducted a ton of scientific research while she was up there. She went up on a Soyuz capsule and had a particularly unique return to the Earth, pulling 4 times the G-forces that normally happens, and crash landing hundreds of miles off of course, and was actually discovered by nomads there. So just an incredible story that she has that I hope you get the chance to hear. And Richard Garriott is also here with us as well. He serves as the president of the Explorers Club. He is a founding father of both the video game industry and the private space industry. He has the distinction of having explored both poles, been in orbit, and been to the deepest part of the ocean. So really fantastic to have his experience here today. And on a more personal note, his wife Letitia is also a tech entrepreneur and investor, and was good enough and generous enough to work with us at Space Prize over the last year on our program in Paris and in Portugal. Beth Moses is with us. She's the chief astronaut instructor at Virgin Galactic, which, by the way, as an educator, I think is just about the coolest title possible. But she is by training an aerospace engineer, and she was the first woman to go to space on a commercial aircraft. Quite a few years after the others, actually, here in 2019, if I have that right, or perhaps that was your second flight was in 2021. So we're super excited to have her here and to be able to tap into her experience as well. Next up is Chris Sembroski, who was on the Inspiration 4 flight, man, only about a year ago. Chris, also a astronautical engineer by trade, a former space camp counselor. He's now at Blue Origin himself. So we're really excited to have him here with us as well. Those guys raised $250 million for St. Jude's Children's Hospital last year. So that was a really fantastic project. Finally, Dr. Chris Boshuizen, or Dr. Crispy, as you may know him, his music DJ name. He flew with William Shatner last year on Blue Origin flight NS-18, just about a year ago. He's the co-founder and CTO of Planet Labs. My favorite way to talk about Chris's story is that he's been in every part of this industry. He's an aerospace engineer. He's been an entrepreneur. He's been an investor. He kicked off the small sat revolution, I think it's fair to say. So we're really excited to have him here too. And I'm excited to have been able to meet and work with all of you, and really excited to dive into this panel. Now I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing here so that we can be larger on the screen. And Ron, if you're recording, perhaps you can give us the large speaking head. So whoever's responding will be primary there in recording. But I do want to ask you guys to kick off. We introduced the idea of the overview effect. And I wonder, you've all had very different experiences in space, from parabolic flights to crash landings. But how has your perspective or consciousness been changed by your minutes, days, or weeks in space? And how does that change your life since then? So really open-ended. You could respond about the overview effect. You can respond in whatever way might be more personal to you. But how was your perspective or consciousness changed by traveling to space? And to make this easy, why don't we start with Soyeon?
Okay, so nice to meet you, everyone, and thank you for a wonderful introduction, Mark. And so nice to meet you, other panel. It's been a while to meet you guys, thanks to the COVID pandemic situation. As you can see on my background, and then this is the Korean peninsula, but looks like a South Korean island at night. And my overview effect is quite dramatic, because as I grew up, I always heard from astronauts speaking and kind of testimonial and court. They said, you cannot see the border between the country if you go up to the space. But unfortunately, I can see the clear, distinct border between the South Korea and North Korea. And that's very kind of funny situation. And all other astronauts, maybe Chris and Richard, all agreed, we really love to look down to the Earth whenever we can have a time, whenever we can be right beside our window. And we cannot even think of how much time passed, because it's beautiful and very, very attractive. And at the very first time when I looked down to the Korea, and I was so surprised because space station flies so fast, first of all. So it takes several minutes just to pass the whole Korea. Even if when I'm driving, it takes several hours. And I forgot to bring the camera, and I forgot to take a photo of the Korean peninsula, even if I'm the first Korean astronaut who've been in space, very first time at the time. And I just complained about that. And then my Russian colleague said that, oh, you have such a little cute country. Yeah. Because they have such a big, huge country. But after that, I realized, oh my God, how low probability to be born in that such a little cute place. And we are all were born randomly. You didn't pick where you were born before birth. And me too. And if it is really random, what if I were born up there, a little bit darker place, my life would be totally different and change it. But even if I were born and down there in a bright side and then whole infrastructure is really well, and then thank God I was born long enough after the Korean War, I feel so grateful to have education program and all economic booms, and I was a beneficiary of that. But I've never grateful to be born there. Maybe all we are saying, we always complaining about the government systems and leaders and problems and challenge and education systems and some kind of, especially as an engineer, we always have not enough budget for our research. And that was our life. But I realized that, oh my God, just being born there is really grateful, because I got a lot of things for free without paying anything, without writing the resume, without competing with any other people. I was born there, and then I might have a much better life than kids who were born up there, and kids who was born in totally opposite side of the earth, and then keep asking me what I can pay back and what I can do for others, even if it's not because of our fault, it's just happening. So this is one of the biggest overview effect for me. But still, I think I'm quite weak to help or weak to change the world, but still keep asking and thinking of it, and then trying to help and educate, like in this program, and trying to influence others and share this kind of overview effect, how much kind of blessed we are. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a really sobering perspective you offer, particularly with North and South Korea, but looking at the lighted places on Earth and the different advantages that some of us have, right? Well, let's move over to Richard then, and he was on the very next flight after you. It looks like, so it's kind of a fun trip through history here, Richard.
Yeah. In fact, when they got back, that was one of my great pleasures, was this debrief and kind of catch up on how was it. But for me, interestingly, I had actually never heard the word overview effect until experiencing it, despite having an astronaut as a father. And my dad, one of the big pieces of advice he did give me was, we're going to plan any of your spare time at the window. Especially if it's a daylight pass over a continent, you're going to be at the window. And if it's nighttime pass over the Pacific Ocean, go do some work. And little did I know how important that advice was, because as all of us who have been in space know, when you're looking down at space, you are just captivated by the view out the window. It is really actually hard not to stare out the window, because to me, it feels like a fire hose of information about the reality we live in just pouring into your mind just by looking out the window. So to me, as you go around at 17,000 miles an hour, if you're in orbit, you see a sunrise or a sunset every 45 minutes. You cross whole continents in maybe 20 minutes, but it's still 20 minutes. And 20 minutes is, if you were doing Google Earth to scroll by the United States or North America in 20 minutes, you'd be bored and put it away in 2 minutes. But when you're looking down from your isolated outpost, you're captivated to keep looking. And you notice how weather forms and interacts with land masses. You notice erosion by wind and water. You notice all the impacts of humanity, the roads and dams and pollution and wildfires, and how thin the atmosphere is, and the edges of the tectonic plates that you can see laid out before you. You're just captivated by all the reality that you live in. But for me, the big moment came after about 100 orbits, when I happened to look out the window, just like Soyeon, she saw Korea, I saw my hometown of Austin, Texas, and at the same time, Houston, where I grew up, and Galveston, the Galveston coast, where I had, driven to go hang out at the beach. And as a Boy Scout, I'd hiked and biked and camped this area, this triangle of southern Texas. And so it was an area that I knew the scale of very intimately. And I'd been paying very close attention to going around the Earth about 100 times. And suddenly I had this thought, which is, I now know the true scale of the Earth by direct observation. And as soon as that thought crossed my mind, I had a huge physical reaction. And I literally shuddered. I got goosebumps all over my body. And I had something that the best way to describe it was like in a scary movie where there's an actor in a hallway and they'll dolly the camera back, but zoom the lens in, where the actor stays the same. The Earth in this case stayed the same size out the window. But my sense of scale, like the hallway in a scary movie, kind of goes almost like the Matrix. I mean, literally, have this, vibrating effect. And immediately my sense of relationship with the Earth and the scale of the Earth completely changed. And even though I would have already described myself as an environmentalist, my lifestyle was, and frankly still is, pretty horribly abusive to the natural resources. And okay, don't shake your finger at me too much, Beth. But yeah, I'm getting better slowly. And I'm working on trying to help other things get better. But I mean, I immediately got back and I put electrical probes in all my electrical circuits. Quickly realized that LED bulbs that I have all over the place are largely irrelevant. Your lighting is almost irrelevant compared to like air conditioning, or in my case, movement of water. I had a deep well and a pool and a pond, and to save half of my electricity, all I did was turn my pool from 8 hours to 4 hours, and my pond only run during the times I'm coming and going from the house. And but you quickly then start sorting out all the ways that you can be a better steward of this planet. And it's not to say I'm great yet, but I now manage my lifestyle and debate with people strategies about in a much more serious way than I had before.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Richard. And I imagine that shuddering experience that you had was profound, and that's one of the more physical articulations of the overview effect that I've heard. And I'm wondering about it from a psychological perspective, Annie. What that would be like, and if anybody has that shuddering with VR, right? Well, Beth, I want to throw this over to you. Such a different experience you've had, but arguably much more accessible to people, and so hearing that perspective is, I imagine, valuable to all the participants.
Thank you, Mark. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for having me, and thank you, everybody, for being here on a Saturday morning. Yeah, so my overview effect, I suppose, was like maybe the flip side of the coin to Richard's. First of all, I'm just going to give a hint of background in case folks aren't aware. I went to space twice now on a suborbital vehicle that essentially goes straight up, turns upside down so that you can see the Earth better, and then coasts to a stop ballistically, and then coasts back down, turns back upright, and goes through entry. It is so lovely that we have so many different architectures in the world now for human spaceflight, and so many different ways to perceive the Earth from above. Mine happened to be also very much on the clock and on the job on both of my flights. And you probably don't care so much about, all the minute duties and the half-second training and everything else that I put myself and others through. But all of this is to say that the first time I really saw Earth from space, I was floating weightless, deliberately not holding on to anything inside our vehicle, looking out the front of our spacecraft, big bay window, essentially, out of the cockpit. And our spacecraft, shout out to my pilots, Dave and Such, our spacecraft had sort of achieved a perfect stop. It had coasted perfectly, purely vertical to a stop. No rotational rates, it just stopped. And like you, Richard, it hit me in my body. It hit me in my soul. It hit me in my heart. It hit me physically, emotionally. It hit me every possible way. My first flight was out of California. We were in a test program in Mojave Air and Spaceport, and I looked out the window for the 5 seconds that I was allotted to in my workload that day. And I could see this endless, deep, infinite black. We fly in the day, we don't see stars. And so it's just this deep black, matte Vanta, the blackest black I've ever seen, or I think I could ever imagine. And then this super bright Earth below, just beyond high def, super, super bright. I've been an aerospace engineer in human spaceflight my entire career, literally since I was 19 years old. And I've seen, all the IMAX and Omnimax and candid videos and photos, and really videos don't do it justice. There is nothing like seeing it with the human eye. The Earth below me was bright, glistening, and living, because I was completely stopped and our vehicle was completely stopped. I could sense, sort of in a maybe an abstract way, but I could definitely sense the ocean and the movements of the ocean so far below me. I could see what felt like halfway out across the Pacific. You know, certainly a definitely curved Earth. I doubt we have any flat earthers here, but a definitely curved Earth. And then from our apogee, we can see 1,000 miles, you know, 500 miles in each direction. And so I could see, maybe akin to Soyeon, I could see halfway up the US, coast of the US, and halfway down into Mexico. And I couldn't see a wall between the US and Mexico. I could just see Earth. And I could sense the places of the Earth that had humans, and I could sense the places of the Earth that couldn't, or that didn't have humans. And then the most magical thing that stood out, I was so fortunate that day, there was almost no cloud cover, and it had just, we just had a lot of rain and snow in my area. All of the mountains below me on the west coast of the US were covered in snow, and they were just glistening so brightly. I found myself after the flight telling a journalist that it was like the Earth was wearing her diamonds, because you know how snow is just so bright and so glistening with ice crystals. Well, imagine that on, you know, essentially a planetary scale. And I just drunk it in, and I can still picture it in all of its detail today, even though I've flown again and seen it from another, you know, state and another perspective over New Mexico. I think it's magic. You asked everyone, you know, to bring a problem or, you know, something to this. Let's see. Yeah, a problem to solve to this event. My problem to solve, and it's always been, is to get all of you to have this experience and to have your own epiphany, like Richard described, or Soyeon described, or even I described. I think it's super important for humanity. I mean, I think this is something that sort of marinates humanity in good and makes us all better for the future. You know, we understand that we're global, and when you see it this way, you understand it in your soul. I didn't immediately come down and, like, you know, recycle every Coca-Cola bottle in front of me, but I did come down and realize that, you know, because I'm at work, right? This is my job. So of course there's always, you know, like a jerk in every meeting, right? You know, and I came down and I was like, oh, that jerk, he's just another human. You know, I was like, it was easier to do what I do. And I still feel that way. And then over time, like you, Richard, I have just become a more responsible citizen, almost just subconsciously. You know, I buy sustainable clothes now. I do recycle every Coca-Cola bottle. I drive electric, you know, I do what I can. But then more importantly, I try to do what I can to let so many others have this experience so that they can then leverage whatever they do in their lives or want to do to improve the planet.
So awesome. It's really powerful listening to your individual stories. Because, you know, a lot of people in this community, we talk about the overview effect so much, but hearing how you all look back at the place you live and its context with the others around is really really moving. Chris, Sembroski, Hanks, I would love to kick this over to you. You guys had such a beautiful platform for observing the Earth, didn't you?
Yeah, we absolutely did. And it was just breathtaking the first time we opened it up. You know, we knew we had this is part of our mission to you know, go through the procedures to open up this forward hatch to expose this large cupola bubble, which at the time is the largest continuous pane of glass that's been flown to space so far. And it just provided us this incredible view and experience that, you know, I don't know, as everyone is talking and as I keep thinking about what this overview effect, you know, the impact it had on me and what it's like to look back at Earth, there are just thousands of moments, and it's very hard to pick out, you know, which story and which moment to choose from to tell. I mean, because there's looking back on, you know, videos of us inside the cabin, you know, we're playing with, you know, our food a little bit, you know, trying to catch M&Ms or the cold pizza slice or something across the cabin. And it just looked like a few buddies hanging out, you know, just being goofy, you know, okay, they're floating strangely, which doesn't seem like that's normal for what we see in everyday life. And then the camera goes over towards one of the side small windows, and there is this big, beautiful, bright Earth view, and it just completely alters the context. And it's like, oh, this was funny. And then you're just, and then every time I see it, I just stop. And that's that moment where my eyes just get big, and it's like, okay, wow, that hits completely different compared to what everything else that was going on. It's that okay, now I need to pay reverence to that image that I'm experiencing. But I loved how, Beth, you talked about this big, bright Earth that you were seeing, because it's that the cupola bubble, and we, I think maybe Cyan's talked about it now, about how she felt like she was bathed in Earth light, but it is just incredibly. Oh, we did talk about what the overview effect would mean for each of us before we flew, and thinking about not seeing borders, not seeing the divisions between all of us, and that's all true. And but still, it's like it hits you in a way that you don't necessarily expect. And for me, it was like seeing like the snow-capped mountains of the Andes right next to the blue waters of the Pacific, right next to the deserts on the opposite side in South America, those vivid colors, and how everything is dynamic and moving beneath you. And I've purposely repositioned my camera today so you're looking up and not down, because this room is still under construction. But what I've printed out some of those pictures I was able to take from that cupola bubble. We're at an altitude where I can almost pretty much see the entire continent of Australia all in one view. And so really able to see the curvature of the Earth, able to see, at 600 kilometers up, as you go from twilight or from darkness to light, going through a twilight pass, that's when that green line at the top of the atmosphere becomes very, very pronounced, and you can visually see how thin that barrier is that allows all of us to breathe, and everyone and love is within that small piece. And it felt very, I guess, moving in that moment at that altitude to feel that separation, like the four of us were completely felt separated from the Earth. And it felt like this place where everything we know and love and have grown up with is within this place called Earth. That's where it's like our one little special rock that we were just so incredibly lucky to be born on. And it really hits you in a way that you just won't expect. For me, it was an incredible opportunity to see all these amazing, beautiful places on Earth, seeing Australia, seeing South America, seeing how dynamic and alive the Earth is, with the thunderstorms and cold fronts, especially when we crossed North America at night, and being able to see the electricity for just light up the entire continent. Almost, it felt like this amazing fireworks show that went from Texas to Canada, that just, if you lift a blanket up on a cold winter night and look down at your toes and see the static electricity just ripple back and forth in a line, just imagine that visual happening on the Earth nonstop from Texas to Canada. And it really gave you a sense of, oh, this place is so amazing. It's very dynamic, and there's so many different things with it. And like Richard mentioned too, you see the impacts of humanity, the wildfires, so much so in the Amazon, and some of them in Australia, and then you come back. I've come back, and there was no other way that I was going to be able to continue on with what I do professionally without being given the opportunity to be more connected with space and work towards, like Beth mentioned, giving everyone this opportunity to experience that overview effect themselves. And it's a really amazing experience. And Chris, you're going to talk about it here in a second too, but Shatner had this amazing speech when he walked out, and it keeps happening. Sarah Sabry had a similar experience, and when they will talk about it, it's like, wow, and Beth, you mentioned, you hinted at it too, that like being at that altitude with that a completely different perspective, it doesn't take long to be internally moved and have like your soul shifted in a way that makes you appreciate just how incredibly lucky we are to be here. And I need to give you some more time, Chris, because I could keep going. I know we all could keep going. There's so much to share.
It is striking to me hearing you guys. I know you had a few days, so you and Richard were up there longer, but even with Beth's story, that she could have such a profound experience in such a short amount of time, and I know that's what Blue and Galactic are offering people. It's so fantastic. So Chris, take it away.
Yeah, I have the privilege of going last, so I can refer to all of my previous panelists here, and I really relate to everything everyone's saying. In a way, suborbital flights, which Beth and I both took, are somehow maybe even more value, or maybe in a particular way cruel compared to an orbital flight, because unlike Soyeon and Richard, for instance, I didn't get 100 orbits. I got a trip up and dipped my toe into the beach of space and then came back, but I was so profoundly shocked and I wasn't given an opportunity to sleep. So I didn't go to sleep, wake up, go look at the view again and get reacquainted and go, oh, right. The first impression is so deeply shocking. And I came back with that, and I still, to this second, I'm almost going to tear up thinking about it. It's such a profound experience. And it's been 1 year and 2 weeks since my flight now. And I still feel like I'm in that exact second of the first shock of seeing that without any time to really process it or get reacquainted and familiar with the experience. And so when I came down, there were two Korean NASA astronauts who work at Blue Origin, Mike Good and Nick Patrick. I cornered them. I said, guys, I've got a question for you. I feel like I've been tricked somehow, because what I saw up there didn't match anything I'd ever heard or seen before. And I can really relate to what Beth was saying about how Beth, I use almost exactly the same words as you to describe what I saw. I really related to how you described it. And I said, look, it doesn't match what I've seen the pictures. I have this backdrop from Zoom behind me to point to, because we all seen pictures like this of that gradient, the blue to black gradient of space and the atmosphere just fading off into space like that. It doesn't look like that at all. It is so bright and so intense for a number of physical reasons that no camera has the dynamic range to capture it. And when you're up there, it is so overwhelming and powerful that it just shocks you to your core. And it's a very real experience. So even on a suborbital flight, you get this profound impact. And for me, I felt this additional thing, which is because, again, we flew in the day, and so you don't see stars, you just see this inky blackness. I felt this urge, this irresistible urge to just like open the window and keep swimming. Like it was almost like there was a magnetic pull in my chest dragging me out. And it wasn't the vacuum of space. It wasn't like a horror movie. It wasn't like me being sucked down into the vacuum. No, it was a call. And I've never understood this. I've heard, from literature and stuff in human folklore over thousands of years, that some people feel a calling, like a call of nature or something, or a call of God. I've never understood that. And I felt that. And I understood it in that moment, that we are destined to go to the stars. And I felt this urge to just keep going and go and go and go. And I still feel that as well today, like this just strong pull out of my chest, like someone's got a string on my rib cage and they're just pulling me out into the stars. And just sitting there looking at that blackness of space, I just felt that feeling. And so I when I was talking to Frank White, who I think has interviewed all of us here, about the overview effect, I said, Frank, you need a new phrase, which is the outer view effect. And that's what I think I felt most strongly, was this human urge, almost as if I had an explorer gene that woke up, it's activated and said to me, you got to keep going. So that's what I'm going to do.
That's so cool. And you really did do a great job pulling together everything that the others said before you, but it also strikes me as a really fantastic segue to what I want to ask you guys next. Because if you imagine today's second graders in US terms, they're going to graduate high school in 10 years. And if all goes well, we'll have returned to the moon with a permanent presence, and we'll have landed somebody on Mars, and we'll have 3 commercial space stations, and technologies like the things that you all are working on will change more industries than we can imagine down here on Earth. So how might we prepare today's students I mean, that's today's second graders, right? Or graduating into that world.
Yeah.
How might we prepare today's students for humanity's rapidly approaching multi-planet future?
Can I add to that?
We need to go into order if anybody wants to jump in first.
Well, just while I'm still unmuted here, I'll mute in a sec. I just have some thoughts on that. So what's interesting about what's happening today, particularly, I saw someone in the comments trying to, I'm asking questions about the difference between suborbital and orbital, for instance. The human race has finally figured out how to get people to space, all people, not just a select group, an elite group of government trained specialists, which we have none of on this call, by the way. But a select group had the privilege going in the past, but through democratization of access, we're finally able to dip our toe in the beach and to swim a little bit further. And so the world that the second graders are growing up into is one in which they can actually go in their lifetime. My only hope when I was a kid was that I could be a NASA astronaut, and that I would, as an Australian, again, the accident of where I was born, I'd have to become an American and train for NASA and maybe fly on the shuttle. But then when I went to join the Air Force at 17, I found out I was colorblind, so that door closed for me. The world that kids are growing up in today is one where there will be multiple paths for them to get to space, and companies will increase their capabilities. Blue Origin and Virgin will develop systems to fly further. New entrants will come along and do more exciting things. We'll be able to go deeper and deeper into space, and that's the world they're in. So they should assume that this is going to happen, and they can participate if they want. They don't have to go through the song and dance of the things that I had to do. And it's a really cool world that they're growing up in. And I wish that I'm in it already, but I wish I was 10 right now in this world, because it is so exciting.
Yeah, I want to follow up if I could with, I agree with that, by the way, Chris, completely. And so under the assumption that they're all going to go, I mean, I'm very much presuming my kids are going to go. And but part of what at least helped me appreciate the experience I had was both time on orbit, which I think is helpful. It's, the more time, the better. I don't know anybody that thinks that any amount of time is enough. So even the people that like with Soyeon and I, we came down with crewmates who'd been up there for 6 months. And in my case of crewmates, and probably hers too, I asked my crewmates, "Are you ready to come home?" And they were like, "Well, I got a wife and kids, so I guess I gotta, but otherwise I'm staying here." And but one of the things that helped was familiarity with the issues on the ground, and I'm a science geek anyway. I think a lot of us are, and so, and I remember stories of my dad talking about how the Amazon was on fire all the time. He saw it from space. And when I was young is when they always had television advertisements about the Amazon being on fire. But in my modern adult life, I've never seen those commercials very much anymore. And so I was actually quite surprised when I was in space, looked down at the Amazon and saw the whole place on fire. And, and I was going like, oh, wow, I forgot about that since I was much younger, that this has still been going on for my entire life. People have been clear cutting the Amazon. And is that a space cat that just came by there, Beth? Yeah, it was. And but I think that, like when I'm been giving some advice to some of the folks from Worldview, for example, they're going to get nice long hang time up in the stratosphere. And I think, and this would my same advice I would say, and I'm sure Beth is all over this. I'm sure they thought about this, and that herself and others have been adding the same advice. Same with Blue Origin, which is, you want to make sure that the time you have up there is used to its maximum effect. You want to make sure that you're not shocked by the G's, you're not shocked by zero gravity, that you don't wonder what is that island off to the north, or what is that coastline down to the south. What does a fire look like? All of these things you want to have already prepared in your mind, so that what you can take in is the variant of it as you're seeing it from space, not have to come back down and educate yourself. And in which case it's kind of too late. So I think that being well prepared for your space flight is really essential.
Yeah, and you gave us that advice prior to our flight too, right? I remember Richard was kind enough to share his thoughts with us, and I guess I just wanted to. I feel bad, but both Beth and Soyeon, you raised your hands and I just jumped in, but I think just going on the idea though of being well prepared and understanding what you're expecting to see is like that there are a lot of opportunities to to engage with these second graders and middle school kids, anyone really. And that's, I mean, being a part of that mission, we've all been talking a lot about Blue Origin and Virgin, and here I have a whole bunch of like SpaceX rockets behind me. So I just want to say thank you, SpaceX, for sending me to space, coming home safely, even though I work for Blue now, which is great. Getting more people having that access to space is that's the dream. And because getting millions of people working and living there is what the future is going to look like. And any way that we can talk and share these experiences with other people as much as possible, it may not feel like it in the moment, but I know that for me, when I was in high school, I remember having an astronaut come and visit our campus and give a talk, and I still remember it. And I still have the 8.5 by 11 glossy. It was, from stashed away somewhere.
And now you are one.
Which is completely, yeah, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around that. Yeah, so that being part of that group that's been able to see, that small group that's been able to see the Earth from altitude, it's phenomenal in two ways. One, it's like I feel very lucky and privileged, but also phenomenal from the standpoint, like how has it just been 620 people now to get across that majority of the atmosphere to go see this. And so through programs like Club for Your Future, where they engage with kids to get more involved with STEM, or through postcards, or going and getting involved with Space Camp and sending kids there to have that experience, it is a way to let people and kids engage with activities that they can see on TV and they see in the movies, but they can get that visceral physical contact with some of these activities that really let them explore and get these hands-on moments with all these really fun things. And then being able to relate that to what we are going to do in the future and teach. I mean, it's just that's how you do it. You engage in a way that is relatable. You promote the STEM activities, and gosh, you just share those stories, and that's keep paying this experiences forward. And that's what's really important.
I love it. And maybe we wind up with more third generation astronauts like Richard's kids. Well, Beth, I think you had your hand raised first, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, sure. I was going to riff off of Richard's point, and also I echo what both Chris's said. So, I mean, Richard, that is my exact job, and it has been for 9 years, prepare people to fly to space. And the goal of the training program is to make sure they arrive in space ready to savor the space flight, maybe in aerospace lingo, ahead of the aircraft, and know exactly what they just heard, how they got there, what they're going to hear the pilots say, what they're going to see, how far out are you seeing, what is that canyon on the edge, what is that body of water on the edge, you won't see stars, all of that. And it's extremely exciting to bring this to everyone. It's also all of us on this call, all of us are inventing something brand new. I mean, this is sort of an inflection point, I think, in human history, and we're sort of like living proof of it right here. I guess I'm like we're all here, everyone on this call, even not just the speakers, but everyone on this call, we're all here for something, bigger than ourselves, right? And not to use myself or even my company as an example, I salute, every human space flight program and person everywhere. This is so hard. I mean, everyone has my massive respect. But just to take, like maybe myself and my company as an example, there are so many brand new facets of human spaceflight that I would tell the second graders, you follow what you love in life and just intersect it with human spaceflight, and there will be a place for you, whether it's in space or on the ground or in testing environments between. This is the birth of a new industry and new ways to both work in it and access space. I mean, you can just tell by the panelists here, right? We've got a professional astronaut and whatever terminology you want to use, private astronauts. I mean, you go back to what Chris was saying, back when I was a kid, the only way to get to space was to try to qualify to be a government astronaut. And, the government you would work for if you were a professional government astronaut depended on where you lived, right? I mean, for me, it was the American government program. For others, it was other government programs, but that was it. I mean, and now you can work for human spaceflight companies. That's what I do every day. You can buy access to the experience from various companies through various ways. And the idea behind the flights is growing. You know, we talk about this democratization of space. You can charter a flight to do whatever it is you think will help or want to do. You know, take your family, film a movie, raise millions of dollars for childhood cancer, do professional experiments, follow in your father's footsteps. You know, I mean, all these different things. This is such an explosion of access and work that I don't even think I've got my head around, you know, exactly how exciting and open this is going to be for all these second graders. I think the second graders today are, you know, sitting in a really lucky place because they have folks like Ron doing space chats who can explain all this and basically say, look, there are no limits. In fact, the industry is redefining itself and growing. So not only are there no like limits of physics, like where you can go in space, but also there's like no limits of what the industry needs. I just think it's an amazing time to be young and looking forward to working in space, because you can sort of literally almost do what you choose and invent it.
I love that message. And we've got a couple of minutes left for Soyeon to respond as well.
Actually, yeah, pretty much what I really want to say, Beth already covered. Because, yeah, I always think and how important diversity it is in any industry and in any place, any kind of project. But space, unfortunately, we didn't have that much diversity. Actually, when we were in Russia together with Richard, we talked about that a long time ago. Astronaut just opened to the test pilot, and then even engineers and scientists like me, we cannot be included. But as time goes by, medical doctor and then scientists go there, but still a lot of kids, they have a bias like, to work in a space field, I should be good at math and science. Maybe if not, I cannot go there. But thanks to all different kinds of astronauts, they can be inspired by, yeah, maybe I can do this, maybe I can do this. But still, it's a little bit limited, because when I was a kid, I was strongly believe that I cannot be an astronaut or I cannot fly in space, because whenever I watch a movie or a documentary, and then all astronaut doesn't look like me, and then not only male but also different race and different color, and then that made me a huge bias about that maybe I cannot fly. But we all made all different kinds of diverse based on the industry, also expertise and cultural. And when I talked with a Malaysian astronaut, I was so shocked, because I've never thought that way. In that culture, it's really important to where to face when they have a praying, but in space, which direction they should pray. And then they have a huge debate. And then I think we should have all different kinds of discussion and debate to kind of embrace and then include all different kind of culture and all different kind of industry. And then several months ago, and then they tried to make a poem to say goodbye to the ISS several years later, but I've never thought about making the poem and then eulogy or some kind of artistic activity. But now we just connected all each other, and then my friends painting the drawings and enjoying some beautiful painting in a space. And then I don't want to limit all different kinds of thing. And then still sad, some of the kids opposite side of the earth, they narrow their dream to be in a space, but hopefully in kind of several years they can do whatever they love to do, and then they don't have to narrow their dream to be in a space economy. That's the what we should do, and then that's the what they will do, I hope.
That's wonderful. What a great note to end on, because it is a space economy. It's not just a space industry anymore, and everybody can be a part of it. There is a place for you, as Beth said. That was just fantastic, because it's not just scientists, engineers, and pilots. You know, now it's lawyers and designers and historians, and so many people needed to be a part of all of this. So I want to thank the panelists for joining us this morning on Saturday morning on your long weekend if you're here in the US. Just fantastic to have everybody here and to hear your varied perspectives. And it was an interesting point. I think, forget who made it, but we really don't have anybody on this call that took that traditional route. You all found your way there through a variety of paths, and it's fantastic to hear a little bit about your trajectory. So thank you all for joining us this morning. We have a full day of concurrent sessions. We have 20 concurrent sessions planned, and the capstone will bring everybody back together this afternoon. So you're all invited to stay for that. In fact, let me share my screen here and put up our next session. But I also I'll be quiet for just a moment, just so in case the panelists have any sort of last minute goodbyes or last minute message for everyone.
Just had a question for Richard, actually. So you're a second generation astronaut, right? And so does that make would your children, if they go, be the third generation of astronauts?
That would, of course, but
Yeah, wow.
But of course that means they have to be there's actually two other second generation astronauts. They both happen to be Russian, and they also have children. And so the race is on. Oh, that's cool. The race is on, but we'll see.
I just want to say thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, and everybody have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Great to see all of you.
Yeah,
great time at the conference, everyone.
All right, thank you again to our panelists, and thank you to all the participants who came this morning to hear as well. Our first session will start in about 15 minutes. We